Back in 2011, I participated in a trail running race. This event was completely for charity. I knew that all the proceeds from the race would go to a charity that helps people with disabilities who need help. This made me feel very proud. When I arrived at the race site, the sound of people laughing and cheering kept coming. Representatives from charities were promoting and raising money for their organizations. I even saw some disabled people there, who were just as enthusiastic and motivated as everyone else. I was greeted by an enthusiastic staff member and quickly collected my race number and other necessary items. I quickly settled into the family and did a warm-up drill with the other competitors. I felt full of energy and motivation and ready to take on the challenge of this charity trail run. The terrain for this trail run was very challenging, and runners had to deal with all types of terrain and weather conditions. The start of the race was on a wide green grass field. The course passes through a steep hill and a swift river. The referee stood at the very center of the start and raised the starting gun. His hand was steady on the handle and his eyes were focused and determined. The staff next to him checked each runner's equipment and number plate under the instructions of the referee to ensure the fairness and safety of the race. With a loud gunshot, the competition officially began. The race site was bustling with spectators cheering and cheering. Some time after we set off, the sky became increasingly cloudy. A cool breeze blew across my cheeks. It seemed like it was about to rain and the temperature dropped a bit. I didn't lose my motivation because I knew I had put in too much effort to just give up so easily. Just then, a river appeared in front of me. It was the widest river in the race. After crossing this river, I was not far from the finish line. I took a deep breath and sped up my pace to save as much time as possible. I knew that the second half of the course would be tougher and require more physical strength and endurance. I swam across that wide river without any problems. When I got to shore, my body was shaking. I realized I was losing heat and it was bad. I sped up as fast as I could to try to regain my body's temperature. However, no matter how fast I sped up, my body still couldn't stop shivering. My footsteps became heavier and heavier, and my breathing became more and more difficult. I wanted to stop and take a break, but didn't dare stop because I knew it would make my loss of temperature worse. Slowly, my vision began to blur. I lost consciousness. I don't know how long it took, but I felt my soul leave my body. I saw my body lying on the ground with people surrounding me. Then, a car pulled up next to my body and two paramedics got out of the car. They walked toward me and began to resuscitate me. I felt very frightened because I did not know what was happening. My mind became a little confused, but I could clearly see the paramedics working around me. They checked my pulse and breathing, and then began CPR. I felt like a bystander. I couldn't feel any physical sensations. I didn't know if my soul had actually left my body or if it was just a hallucination. But I knew that this moment was very important to me and that my life was in danger. Suddenly, I felt a powerful force above my head that was sucking me in. This black hole was spinning continuously. My soul was getting closer to the black hole and I started to feel fear. I didn't know what was going to greet me. I was completely controlled and allowed the black hole to suck my soul into it. Then, I was taken to a strange world. There was darkness all around me, no sound, and no light. But I wasn't afraid. Instead I felt an inexplicable sense of peace and tranquility. I don't know how long I stayed here, maybe a few minutes, maybe a few hours. Time became blurred here. I saw a bright light appear ahead. When I was about to approach the bright light, I felt a strong force blocking me. It was as if an invisible force was pulling me backwards. Every step I took became extremely difficult. As if every step forward was going to consume all my strength. With great effort, I finally stepped into the light. The feeling here was completely different from before, as if I was in a completely different world. There was a warmth in the air, and I felt myself wrapped in a calming energy. Here, I felt a strong wave of love. This energy was stronger than any kind of love I had ever experienced. This love was so pure, as if it could eliminate all pain and worry. I felt that my soul was purified here. I became freer and more perfect. This is a very special place that fills me with courage and strength. Suddenly, a person appeared behind me. It was as if he was watching me. I didn't dare to look back. Then, I heard a voice, which was full of power and authority. I knew this voice, it was the voice of Jesus. I slowly turned around and saw a man in a white robe with a cross on his chest. He was Jesus. His eyes were filled with love and tenderness. Jesus reached out his hand and gently stroked my head. The feeling was as gentle as a father touching his son. I felt my heart being surrounded by this warmth and love. As I walked up to Jesus, he seemed to already know how I had died. He said to me in a soft tone, "I know all that you have done for others, my son." Jesus then expressed his appreciation for my actions. He said, "Such actions of yours can make the world a better place, my child. Your kindness and efforts will inspire others." When I heard Jesus' appreciation for my actions, I began to feel embarrassed and even a little guilty. I thought that what I was doing was very small. However, Jesus dismissed my thoughts by saying, "Don't underestimate what you have done, my child. Every little thing has its significance and makes a big impact." I was a little surprised by Jesus' words because I had never thought that my actions would have such a big impact. He continued, "Every little thing has the potential to change a person, or even the whole world." Next, with a wave of Jesus' hand, a screen appeared in front of me. I saw a homeless man. I remembered him. I had helped him 3 years earlier. I gave this homeless man some money and clothes then. He was very grateful to me. He told me he had been on the street for a long time with little to show for it. He was honored to have met me and felt that my help had changed his fate. Then I saw his life behind him. In the following days, he found a stable job and restarted his life. I was very happy to see such a scene. But I was surprised that the homeless man now also became a volunteer and often went to the nursing home to help other elderly people. I was a little surprised because I never thought my help would have such a big impact. But it's also very gratifying to know that my good deeds have led to more good deeds. This homeless man has now become a person who changes the lives of others as well. He helps other seniors and makes them feel happier and more content. This event made me feel the power of kindness, which can change a person's fate and pass it on to others. Through my help, this homeless man also found his purpose and meaning and became a more valuable person. Then, I saw another image. At one point in my work, a new colleague came into the company. I unintentionally said something that hurt him. I didn't realize how much my actions hurt this new colleague. Soon, this new colleague resigned. I did not know the reason for his departure at that time. Next, I saw what his life was like after he left. He had doubts about his ability to do his job. He had not found a new job for a long time and was increasingly lacking the confidence and courage to interview for a new job. I felt very guilty because I realized that my actions had had a profound effect on him. Jesus did not judge me. Jesus made me begin to reevaluate my actions and realize that even small actions can have a huge impact. Jesus gave me a new perspective. I began to see what I was doing. This revelation has had a huge impact on my life going forward. In my conversations with Jesus, He also communicated to me more knowledge. Finally, as our conversation drew to a close, Jesus told me, "It's time to take what you've learned and go back." This statement made me feel a little regretful because I didn't want to leave Jesus. But at the same time, I felt excitement and anticipation because I knew I was going to go back and apply what I had learned to real life. I said goodbye to Jesus and expressed my gratitude to Him. Jesus gave me some words of blessing and encouragement that made me feel confident and courageous. When I was back in the tunnel again, I didn't feel as scared as I did the last time. Instead, I felt full of courage and determination. I felt a change in my surroundings. The walls of the tunnel were no longer gray and gloomy, but full of life and vibrant colors. Finally, my soul re-entered my body. When I woke up from the ambulance, I felt in a very good state. I wanted to finish the rest of the race. I saw the doctors and nurses busy checking my body. I told them I was fine and that I could continue the race. But the doctors refused my offer and told me I had to be examined and treated more thoroughly in the hospital. In the hospital, I described to the doctors my experience of seeing Jesus. They looked at me with different eyes. Only I knew what I had experienced. I realized that I had gained a deeper insight and revelation during my experience. I knew what I should do next. I should take what I learned back to real life. Use my own actions to convey this revelation and help those who are in need.
I used to be an unmarried person. I always thought I would be happier living alone. However, at a party, I met my current husband. We fell in love at first sight and our romance developed very quickly. Soon we started thinking about our future life and family. Although I never wanted children before, when I met my husband, I began to envision myself having a complete family with children growing up together. Since I was over the age of 35, pregnancy might be more difficult for me. I learned that older mothers are prone to many health risks. 6 months into my marriage, I unexpectedly found out that I was pregnant. The news was a surprise to my husband and me, and we were both very happy and excited. Although we sometimes worried about whether we were ready for a child, we also felt full of love and anticipation. We started making all kinds of preparations for the upcoming child. At the same time, we made some changes to our lives, such as focusing more on healthy eating and lifestyle habits to ensure the health and development of our fetus. My husband was very caring throughout my pregnancy. He would cook for me often. We also planned the education and growth of our future child together and imagined a better life after the baby was born. When I was 2 months pregnant, I got sick a lot and didn't feel like I was in good health. Maybe it was because I was older and my body was less resistant to viruses. Even though I took great care of myself, I couldn't completely avoid getting sick. Later, my son was born successfully, and my husband and I were very happy. 3 months after my son was born, my headache became more and more severe. One day, I was home alone to take care of the baby. After successfully putting my son to bed, I felt thirsty and wanted to go to the kitchen to get a glass of water. The moment I stood up, I felt as if the whole room was spinning. I tried to stand firmly on my feet, but soon felt weakness on the soles of my feet. However, my eyes began to blur, and I felt my consciousness begin to fade. When I opened my eyes again, I realized that my soul had left my body. I felt confused and scared, not knowing what had happened to me. I saw my body lying on the floor as if I was asleep. I saw that my son was sleeping in his crib. I began to feel panic and my mood became overwhelmed with anxiety. I didn't want to leave my child, I didn't want to give up my life, I wanted to watch my son grow. I started trying to get back into my body, but everything seemed like a pointless effort. My soul seemed unable to return to my body, leaving me with an overwhelming sense of despair. In this desperate situation, I thought of God. I prayed to God, God, please, now is not the time for me to leave, my son needs me. My prayer was answered. Suddenly, I noticed a door appear in the air of the room, a door that looked very special, like it was made of clouds. Even though I felt some uneasiness and uncertainty, I knew I had to go in and take a look. As I walked through the door, I felt a wonderful sense of calm, as if I were surrounded by an atmosphere of love. It was a space of nothingness where no matter existed, only pure energy. I felt very light and free of physical restraints and limitations. Although this space had no physical presence, its presence and energy made me feel infinitely warm and at ease. It made me believe that I would never be alone. Suddenly, a bright light appeared ahead. I felt that the whole space was illuminated by this bright light. Curious, I walked forward and tried to explore the secret of this light. As I approached the light, I saw a figure appear in front of me. He was wearing a white robe and he looked very tall, but I couldn't make out his face. Even though I couldn't see his face, I could feel how holy and powerful he was. I knew this man was God. I felt my soul became small in front of him. God told me that my time had not yet come and I could not enter that light yet. Your children still need your care. I told God that I was praying to you to help me get back into my body. I said to God, I don't want to go back just yet, can I ask you a few questions? God replied, sure. I asked God why some people meet angels and you during near-death experiences and others do not. God gently replied, because each person's soul has its own path, and some need more guidance and help, while others have found their way. God went on to explain that some people feel lost and disoriented in life and they need to rediscover their faith and direction. The angels and I will lead them back on track. Some people have already found their faith and direction in life, and they don't need additional guidance or help. So in a near-death experience, they may not encounter angels and God, but will experience other experiences. God reminded me that people need to trust their heart and intuition, which is the key to finding their own direction. It is also important to understand that everyone's path is different and that one cannot force others to follow their own way. I had an abortion when I was 25 years old. It made me feel very guilty. So I asked God, I know that abortion is a bad thing, I want to know what are the specific bad effects. God answered that abortion is a wrong practice and explained why. Abortion is a violation of life. Every conceived life has a right to be protected, and abortion causes that right to be violated. Abortion can have an impact on both the individual and society. For the individual, abortion can lead to physical and psychological trauma that can last for a long time. Humanity should respect every life that is conceived. Efforts should be made to provide support and help to those who face difficulties in pregnancy and childbirth, rather than choosing abortion. Then, God showed me this picture. The soul of a child who is looking for a warm and happy home. This child saw many families, but he did not find the home he had been looking for. Finally, one day he saw a couple who were full of love and care and who gave a lot to each other. The child decided to choose this couple as his parents. But 2 months later, the couple had relationship problems. The girl decides to have an abortion. Finally, a new life disappeared. I felt so ashamed that God did not blame me. He reminded me that everyone makes mistakes and that I can achieve salvation and inner peace by reflecting and changing. At the same time, he reminded me that every life is precious and needs to be respected and cherished. Finally, I asked God if I could visit heaven, and he smiled and nodded. I felt very excited and held his hand tightly. Then, we suddenly disappeared into the same place. The next second, we appeared in a strange place. I found myself in a beautiful environment. Beneath my feet was an emerald green grass, and I could feel its soft and comfortable touch. There was a beautiful waterfall in the distance, with water dropping down from a high place, making a crisp and pleasant sound. The air here is very fresh and makes me feel very comfortable and relaxed. I looked up and found a huge city suspended in the air. The city consisted of many tall buildings, palaces, and sculptures. The city was surrounded by a forest and a calm lake, which looked very peaceful and beautiful. Below the city, there were some small villages. These houses look very lovely. The houses are surrounded by gardens and ponds. Some small children are running and playing here, looking very happy. Everything here was so beautiful and perfect that I felt like I had entered a dream world. I turned my head to look at God, and he looked at me with a smile. He said, "This is heaven, and the people here have been enjoying happiness and joy." My heart was filled with gratitude. I never thought I would have the opportunity to enter such a wonderful world. While I was still admiring the beauty in front of me, I thought I heard the sound of a baby crying. It was my son crying. I knew I had to go back now. I had to go back and take care of my baby. I lifted my head and looked at God. Suddenly, a warmth wrapped around me. And then I was back in that nothingness. I went through the door and then back into the real world. I felt as if I had woken up from a dream. I saw that the door in the air had disappeared and the real world reappeared in front of my eyes. When I tried to move my body, but I couldn't do it. I felt as if I was a wandering spiritual body, unable to control my body. I knew that my soul had to reconnect with my body in order to regain the ability to move. I began to try to connect, but my first attempt failed. I heard my son's cries, and I became increasingly anxious and restless. But I did not give up. I concentrated again and tried to reconnect my soul with my body. I felt a wonderful power begin to flow into my body. My body gradually regained its ability to move. The process was not an easy one. I felt a strong pain, as if my whole body was trembling violently, but I did not give up. Eventually, I managed to get back into my body. I felt a strong rush of excitement as I regained my ability to move. I went to my son's crib and picked him up, and his cries gradually quieted down. I felt my body gradually recovering, and I was once again a whole person. This experience happened more than 10 years ago, but I can remember all the details clearly every time I recall it. That experience was one of the most amazing and meaningful experiences of my life. I thank God that He was there for me when I needed Him the most. At that time, I felt like my soul had lost its direction and purpose. But God showed up and gave me hope and strength again. Now, my son is about to turn 18. I thank God for allowing me to be by his side. I shudder to think how my son would have gotten through all those years if I had actually died at that time. My heart is filled with gratitude and thankfulness because I was able to witness my son's growth and progress. He became more and more independent and confident and more responsible. I feel like the happiest person in the world because I have a healthy and happy child and a complete family. I now cherish every moment in my life. And it makes me believe more in God's will and arrangement. No matter what will happen in the future, I will be grateful for every person and every event in my life, because they are all precious gifts from God.